I never thought I'd hear those words from my own son. We were standing there, just the two of us, the weight of what had just happened settling between us like a secret too big to hold. He turned to me, eyes wide, voice barely above a whisper. "Don't tell anyone what we just did." At that moment, my heart pounded, not from fear exactly, but from the sheer uncertainty of what came next. I looked at him, searching his face, trying to read what he was feeling. Was it guilt? Excitement? A mix of both? Whatever it was, I knew one thing. It wasn't something we could easily forget. Just minutes earlier, everything had been normal. A regular day, nothing out of the ordinary. We were just spending time together, like any parent and child would. And then, in the blink of an eye, everything changed. It wasn't anything dangerous, nothing that would put us in real trouble. But it was one of those moments that sticks with you. One of those things you don't plan for, but somehow you find yourself in the middle of it anyway. I took a deep breath, my mind racing. Do I ask him why he doesn't want anyone to know? Do I pretend like it never happened? Do I reassure him, tell him it's okay? A part of me wanted to laugh, another part wanted to make sure he understood what just happened. But before I could say anything, I realized maybe I wasn't supposed to. Maybe, whatever it was, this was one of those moments that belonged just to us. I glanced around, suddenly more aware of everything, the sounds in the distance, the way the air felt heavier, like we had stepped into a world separate from the one we were in just moments before. It was just a few seconds, but it felt longer, like time had stretched, waiting for whatever came next. And then he looked up at me again. There was something in his eyes, an unspoken question, maybe even a little bit of worry. He was waiting for my response, for my reaction. I could feel it, the weight of the moment pressing down. Whatever I said next would matter, but before I could even open my mouth, something else happened, something that made my breath catch, something that made this already strange moment take a turn I never saw coming. And that's when I realized this wasn't over yet. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. The way my son was looking at me, it wasn't just nervousness. There was something else behind his eyes, something I couldn't quite place. I wanted to tell him it was fine, that whatever had just happened wasn't a big deal, but even I wasn't sure if that was true. The air between us felt heavier now, thick with unspoken thoughts. I glanced around again, feeling like I needed to ground myself, to make sure we were still in the same world we had been in just minutes ago. The street was quiet, the faint hum of life carrying on in the distance, as if nothing had changed. But for us, everything had. I took a breath and crouched down so I was at his level. "Hey," I said gently, keeping my voice low like we were still caught in whatever strange moment we had stepped into. "Why don't you want anyone to know?" He hesitated, shifting from one foot to the other. His little hands clenched into fists at his sides, like he was holding on to something more than just the words he wasn't saying. Finally he bit his lip and shook his head. "I just don't," he murmured. "We're not supposed to talk about it." My stomach twisted. Not supposed to. Those words sent a chill through me. It wasn't just that he didn't want to tell, it was that he thought he couldn't. But why? I studied his face, looking for clues. He was only a kid, but kids didn't just say things like that for no reason. Something about this moment had gotten under his skin, lodged itself in his mind in a way that made him feel like silence was the only option. I opened my mouth to push a little more, to ask what he meant, but before I could, he grabbed my hand. His fingers tightened around mine, his grip stronger than I expected. "Can we just go?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated. Every instinct in me was screaming to ask more questions, to figure out exactly what was going through his head. But something about the way he looked at me, the way his body tensed like he was bracing for something, made me stop. "All right," I said finally. "Let's go." We started walking, my son gripping my hand tightly, his small fingers curled around mine like he was afraid to let go. My mind raced with questions. What had just happened? Why was he so sure we couldn't talk about it? And more importantly, who had told him that? Because as we turned the corner, leaving whatever had just unfolded behind us, I had the sinking feeling that this wasn't just a secret between the two of us. Someone else knew, and that changed everything. As we walked, my son stayed close to me, his grip still firm in my hand. He wasn't saying much, but I could feel his little heart racing just by the way he moved. Whatever had just happened wasn't sitting right with him, and if I was honest, it wasn't sitting right with me either. I wanted to believe it was nothing, that maybe it was just a kid's imagination running wild. But the way he had whispered those words, the way he kept glancing over his shoulder like someone might be watching, it wasn't something I could ignore. We reached the car, and I opened the door for him. He climbed in quickly, buckling his seatbelt without a word. I got in beside him, my hands gripping the steering wheel, but I didn't start the engine. Instead, I turned to him. "Listen," I said carefully, keeping my voice steady. "I need you to be honest with me. What happened back there? Why can't we tell anyone?" He chewed on his lip, staring at his hands. For a long moment I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, in a small, hesitant voice, he finally spoke. "Because they said we couldn't." A chill ran through me. They. The word hung in the air between us, heavy and unexplained. My mind spun, trying to piece together what he meant. "Who told you that?" I pressed, trying to keep my voice calm even as my heart pounded. He shook his head quickly, his eyes darting to the window like he was afraid to say too much. "I don't know," he whispered. "But they were there. They saw." I felt a deep unease settle in my chest. Someone else had been watching. But who? And why did my son seem so afraid to say more? I swallowed hard, my fingers tightening around the steering wheel. My son's words echoed in my mind. They were there. They saw. A heavy silence filled the car, thick and unshakable. I could feel his unease, the way his body tensed, his little hands gripping the edge of his seat. Whoever they were, he was afraid of them, and that terrified me. I glanced in the rearview mirror, my pulse quickening. The street was empty, nothing unusual, but suddenly the quiet didn't feel comforting. It felt wrong, like the calm before a storm, like something was lurking just beyond what we could see. I turned back to my son. "You have to help me understand," I said softly. "Who saw? What did they look like?" He hesitated, his small chest rising and falling in uneven breaths. "I don't know," he whispered finally. "I didn't see their face. But I felt them." A chill ran down my spine. "Felt them." His voice wavered. "They were close, watching. I think they knew we weren't supposed to be there. I felt my heartbeat in my ears. Weren't supposed to be there." My mind raced, trying to retrace our steps, to make sense of what he was saying. We hadn't done anything wrong, had we? I reached for my phone, my hands slightly shaky. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe my son's imagination was running wild. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. And then, just as I was about to start the car, something outside caught my eye. A shadow, movement. Someone was there, watching us, and they weren't leaving. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. But I saw it, just beyond the car, near the edge of the street. A shadow shifting, too still to be nothing, too present to ignore. Someone was there. My son must have sensed it too, because his fingers gripped the seatbelt tighter. His breath came in quick, uneven gasps. "Dad," he whispered, barely moving his lips. "They're still watching." I forced myself to stay calm, to keep my voice steady. "It's okay," I murmured, though I wasn't sure if that was true. "Just stay with me." Slowly, I turned my head, scanning the dimly lit street. For a second, I saw nothing. The figure was gone. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe I was letting my son's fear get to me. But then, just as I exhaled, I saw it again. A flicker of movement near a tree. Someone stepping back into the shadows. They weren't gone. They were just waiting. My pulse pounded. I couldn't just sit here. I needed to move, to get us out of here. But before I could start the car, my son's small hand shot out and grabbed my arm. His grip was cold, tight. "We can't go home," he said suddenly. I turned to him, confusion cutting through my fear. "What?" "They know where we live." A shiver ran through me. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He swallowed hard, eyes darting to the window like he expected someone to be right there, inches away. "Before we left," he said, his voice shaking, "I heard them. They said our house. They said our house." The weight of his words hit me like a punch to the chest. Someone had been close enough to speak, close enough for him to hear them, and they weren't just watching us, they knew us. My hands clenched around the steering wheel, my mind racing. This wasn't just a strange moment anymore. This wasn't just a kid's fear getting the best of him. Someone had been there, and they had whispered about our home. I forced myself to take a breath. I needed to think. I needed to act. But before I could decide what to do next, my phone lit up on the dashboard. A new message. "You shouldn't have gone there." I stared at the screen, my heart hammering. No name, no number, just the words. And in that instant, I knew this wasn't over. It was only just beginning. A cold dread settled over me as I stared at the message. "You shouldn't have gone there." The words seemed to glow on the screen, pressing into my mind, making my grip on reality feel unsteady. My son shifted beside me, his breathing fast, his eyes locked on the phone. He didn't say anything, but I knew he saw it too. I couldn't sit here any longer. Whoever they were, they had already proven one thing. They were watching. And if they knew where we lived, staying in one place was the worst thing we could do. I started the car and pulled away from the curb, my eyes darting between the road and the rearview mirror. The street was quiet, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. I didn't know where I was driving, just away. Somewhere safe, somewhere I could think. Then my son spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, what if they're already there?" My chest tightened. The thought sent a wave of panic through me, but I couldn't let it show. I had to stay calm for him. "We'll be careful," I said, though I wasn't sure what that even meant anymore. I took a long way home, driving through side streets, checking every turn. Nothing. No cars following, no figures in the dark. For a moment, I almost convinced myself it was over, that maybe this was all just some strange misunderstanding. Then we pulled into our street, and my stomach dropped. The porch light was off. I always left it on. I put the car in park, my heart hammering. My hands were sweaty against the steering wheel. Something was wrong. "I want you to stay in the car," I told my son, keeping my voice steady. "No matter what happens, you stay here. Lock the doors." He nodded, his little hands gripping his seatbelt. His eyes were wide, scared, but he didn't argue. I stepped out, every nerve in my body on high alert. The night was quiet, too quiet. I made my way toward the door, my fingers shaking as I reached for the handle. It wasn't locked. My breath caught. I pushed it open slowly, my pulse pounding in my ears. The house was dark, but something felt off, like the air had shifted. I stepped inside, my fingers hovering over the light switch, and then a voice right behind me. "We warned you." The light flickered on, And I wasn't alone. My breath stopped. The voice was close, too close. I spun around, my heart pounding, expecting to see a figure looming in the dark. But there was no one. The air felt heavy, thick with something I couldn't explain. My hands clenched into fists, my mind racing. I knew I had heard it. "We warned you." I flicked the light switch up and down, but the bulb only flickered, casting strange, shifting shadows across the walls. My instincts screamed at me to get out, but I forced myself to stay still, to listen. The house was silent, but it wasn't empty. I could feel it. Then, footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from down the hall. I backed up toward the door, my pulse in my throat. I needed to get to my son. I needed to leave, now, but as I reached for the doorknob, something caught my eye. An envelope. It sat on the floor just inside the doorway, like someone had placed it there on purpose. My name was scrawled across the front in shaky, uneven letters. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. I hesitated, every part of me screaming not to open it, but I had to. I tore it open, my breath shallow as I unfolded the paper inside. "You were never supposed to see it." That was all it said. No explanation, no signature, just those 6 words. A chill ran through me. I didn't know what it was, what we had stumbled upon, but I understood the message loud and clear. This wasn't a game. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Someone had been watching us, and they wanted us to forget. I didn't wait. I turned, ran back to the car, and yanked the door open. "We're leaving," I said quickly, starting the engine. My son looked at me wide-eyed. "What did you see?" I shook my head. "It doesn't matter." And I meant it. Whatever was in that house, whatever we had unknowingly uncovered, it wasn't worth knowing. I pulled out of the driveway, my hands gripping the wheels so tightly they ached. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel it behind us, that lingering presence, watching as we drove away. We didn't go home that night. We found a motel miles away, somewhere anonymous, somewhere safe. I held my son close, listening to his steady breathing as he slept. And in the quiet of that unfamiliar room, I made a promise. We would never speak of this again.